Right, still recording? Yes. Here we go with another video, as I pretty much promised this week. Pretty strange time all in all together, but also a great time to stay inside and practice. Today I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite guitarists. A common phrase I heard in the context with him over and over, and with other people as well. It's about Pat Metheny and playing changes. You sometimes hear that when people talk about certain guitarists, certain musicians, and especially in kind of so-called jazz circles, more often than not, the phrase or the sentence is said, oh, he doesn't really play the changes. First of all, what do people mean by that? Changes, as probably everybody who watches this video, changes are the chord changes of a given tune. And playing them means playing some notes related or outlining them or making some kind of a sense of the tune. But you see already there, I'm hesitant because playing the changes can mean a lot of different things. One of the most common things I came across a lot of other musicians actually, especially if they're not guitarists, they sometimes refer to playing changes as pretty much playing chord tones with the odd extensions. But let's say you have a 2-5-1, D minor 7, G7, C7, you pretty much almost can think of them as arpeggios in the way some people think about that when they say playing changes, like, you know, strong voice leading, the thirds and the seventh of the chord, pretty much inside of those 4 chord tones with the odd extensions. Obviously not everybody thinks about that, and if you listen to any kind of jazz, you'll see there's a lot more going on than that, but still, it's kind of a very common thought. I encounter a lot of people who actually really think that way. Then the other kind of extreme way of playing changes is, or not extreme way, but another way of thinking about it is what guitarists very often do. It's kind of one of those things that is actually really useful, but can be somewhat of a trap, and that's key centers. A lot of guitarists take a bunch of diatonic chords into one key center and then just change the key center when the key center in the tune changes. So for example, in a 2-5-1 from D minor 7, G7, C7, some guitarists would make you believe you don't have to think of anything because it's all in C major, so you can just kind of meander around C. And what I want to talk about in this video is, first of all, I transcribed some Pat Metheny from Bright Size Life, his first record, and I want to see what he does. But also I want to talk about the middle ground in between those two, because there's nothing wrong with key centers and there's nothing wrong with playing the harmony really detailed with like exact arpeggios. I think it's, as always, it's a happy middle ground in between of them. The problem with key centers is that guitarists very often start to wailing in one key center and let their fingers run through the key center without really even having a clue what are the chords underneath the song. What is exactly the change? What's the voice leading? What's the thing? Because we just think of the key center and then jump. And other people sometimes get stuck in the arpeggio thing, where you have a couple of notes with the extensions, but then you kind of stuck in maybe certain patterns you learn from the arpeggio, but you can't really delve into that, into maybe developing a melodic idea or something where the key center idea might be handy for. Those are kind of the two broad concepts. Ideally, with really great players, they're kind of combined. What I feel is a lot of the things we learn in jazz education nowadays comes like from, I'd say it's the late 50s, early 60s, when kind of Berkeley started in America. And you hear people like John Abercrombie talking a lot about that, about chord scale relationships, so that every chord has an underlying scale, a key center and all of that. Not that the concept didn't really exist, but like it was never really taught in an academic way. It's straightforward as that. And you always have to remember, jazz kind of, as you think about it, in the really early jazz, there was no real jazz education. People only learned by listening, imitating, and kind of maybe studying with. You learned something here and there, but there was no, look, this is a scale, this is a chord. All of that is kind of people later on listening to jazz and trying to make sensible theory to teach out of that, which isn't wrong by all means. We all use it, it's great. But always be aware that there was first a tradition of playing and playing by ear before there was ever a chord scale relationship. And you hear that really early jazz improvisation isn't really anything like what we think now of improvisation. Like a lot of it was really just like alterations of the melody for a long time. Bebop came along and all of that slightly changed, but for a long time it was actually the melody was the main thing and you improvised around that, which we probably all should remember from time to time in course like 6, 7, 8, 9. So what I want to talk today is about Pat Metheny and his approach to playing, because I think he does a little bit of both, but especially in Bright Size Life, he does beautiful things with like the key center idea. For once, it always depends on the tune. If you look at Bright Size Life, the lead sheet, you have very open chords for a very long time. You have chords for like 2 bars at a time, a lot. And a tune that's not crazy fast. Instead of having like split chords with a new chord every 2 beats, we have like this wide open field, so we have more time to express a melodic idea, and also gives us a bit more time to fit in more than maybe just the arpeggio. That being said, what he does is really kind of cool, because he uses a lot of the key center idea, like in this example with the pickup into the solo. The chord is G major 7, and we're kind of in the key of D, so it's the Lydian chord, it's the 4th chord. And what he kind of does is, if you transcribe it, he doesn't really play a G. Like, he doesn't really play like the notes G, B, D, F sharp, and maybe the sharp 11 with the C sharp. Not that he doesn't play the notes, he does play some of those notes, but really what he does is kind of like a run through the diatonic scale. It's this little pickup, and then he has this idea of minor thirds and major thirds. E to G, then he moves that just up through the scale, through the D major scale. Next one is like F sharp to A, then he goes to the next note, which is B to G major third. Next one is A to C sharp, there's the sharp 11. And then the last one is B to D. So it's all thirds, it's like this one idea spun off through the key center. And then he changes it where he goes to the 2nd of the B flat major, which is the next chord. And kind of ends on the A on the major 7 of that chord with that phrase. But really, what I mean by that, for the G major 7, he doesn't play a G major 7 with those 4 notes. He really thinks about, this is in the key of D major. It's kind of not even really a Lydian sound, like it's just like, there is a Lydian sound on there because we played the C sharp at some point, but he really just takes like an intervallic idea and goes through the key center, but then resolves it, goes to a C. The C already indicates kind of like a key change, because when we go from C to C sharp to B flat to that A, which is the major 7. So that's one idea. He thinks of a strong melodic idea. He has like this intervallic idea with a little pickup, and then he moves that for the key center until he changes the key center. Next phrase is a very similar thing, where he plays like a G minor scale over the B flat major 7, which kind of hits some of the right notes. But again, it's not like exactly the arpeggio. It's not B flat, D, F, and A exactly with a 9s or something. It's like a bunch of other notes mixed in, but he has this idea of the pentatonic. Those are just like the same kind of hammer and pull-off idea, all the way to G minor pentatonic down, and then he goes semitone down to results to F sharp, because that's kind of the next chords that's hitting. That's the D major. We're going again, shifting key center, and he hits that note. So again, he has like one theme and resolves that down. Those are just examples of two examples that really struck me transcribing the first chorus of the solo, because they're kind of really disregarding the idea of like those 4 notes, 4 chord. It's like we have this overarching key center idea, and we find a nugget in that, and we move it through it till we at the end resolve it when the chord is changing. It always depends on the tune you're playing. For a tune like this, you have 2 bars, you have kind of an open sound. I think that's a genius way of playing it. On the other hand side, if you have maybe a more traditional tune, let's say you have a tune with like a 1-6-2-5 over and over, like The Way You Look Tonight or something like that. If you kind of just wail over in the key center that is given, because it doesn't leave it all that much sometimes, you're missing the point. Especially if you have a lot of diatonic chords or a very simple tune, Autumn Leaves. If you're just wailing over G minor the whole time in that tune, even if you have great ideas in that scale, you're still kind of not really playing the tune. If it's like, I feel like the more diatonic the tune is, the more you actually have to delve into the strong voice leading and the 3rd and the 7th and the actual details of the chord than the other way around. So I hope that makes sense. It's just 2 examples of how one of my favorite guitarists deals with like longer chords and playing changes. He does it also in a lot of different ways. I have on my channel, in college I did All the Things You Are, and obviously there's way more to talk about and transcribe there with like changing, although he has some of those ideas as well, like in All the Things You Are in the bridge over the A minor 7, D7, G7. He does in this solo a couple of those long melodic ideas that not necessarily deal directly with the chords underneath, but more with the overarching key center. As a conclusion, I don't really have one. Just it's always good to be aware of the two options we have, the key center and the changes, and finding a happy medium with that. I'm still struggling hugely with that, and I think transcribing guys like that can be of immense help. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope I keep it up more on the regular, especially now that everybody's inside. So I hope you stay safe and have a good week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Cheers.